Yeah, so yeah, I'm very excited to be here and share with you guys more on like what we are seeing in the market and how the risks are evolving in the industries when it comes to adoption of AI.
Yeah, thank you as well. James, I did not know you worked at Apple and were part of that, was part of that. And that pleasant surprise because I love that product as well. So
That's awesome. Um, so yeah, I think maybe I think what we can do is maybe we start with kind of like the AI adoption journey, right? So Ryan, I still remember that you and I met at Microsoft Ignite. It
yep,
was many,
yep,
it was many moons ago. I think that was when I was like super impressed with your AI adoption and how kind of like high utilization that you guys have. So maybe we start with like a little bit of where's the adoption is in your view, and then I can share a little bit more on what I've seen in other industries, not just in healthcare, but on in other industries as well. And to make it interactive, like folks, like feel free to ask questions in the chat, and feel free to kind of like raise hand and talk interactively, so we don't have to like a monologue
yeah,
in the
perfect.
webinar.
So I guess when we met, we were, I would say, probably down the same or general road that a lot of companies were going down. How to adopt AI. We're getting pressure from either the board or just people in general wanting to use AI, and we didn't know really how to govern it from a security perspective. We didn't know what it was going to do, or how it was going to affect us at all. So we started down the path of, we're a Microsoft shop, so we leaned towards Copilot initially, and we rolled out Copilot to a pilot group, and went pretty successful. And at this point, we have no guardrails, right? We just have, Copilot Enterprise, so we know it's kind of staying in our tenant, but nothing really else around it. And that ended up being successful. So we rolled it out to about 300 to 350 people. And the utilization was actually pretty impressive. People were using it daily. It was being used, right? And so um, along that line, at some point when we met, we felt we had pretty good adoption. We just still were in the kind of the dark of how, what does this mean for VGM, and what does this mean for eventually all of our clients and our customers.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I've seen in other company too. So we're working with a lot of manufacturers, right? Like so Barry Wamler is a 20,000 machinery manufacturing company, also working with like Kurlingans, which is another manufacturers, and a lot of healthcare organization like Wellstar Health, Hellmark, and many others. And the patterns that we see is pretty much similar to the experience that you described, in which that there is a mandate to adopt AI because you know what? Everyone talking about AI, we better do it too, right? So that's like everyone kind of like getting started on that. And the easiest path for a lot of people is just one of these out of the box AI tools, like in your case, Microsoft, but some people have Google, right? That's where Google Gemini come in by default. Then we also seen like ChatGPT and Claude, especially Anthropic Claude nowadays is getting a lot more popular than ChatGPT, which is surprising. Um, so we also see kind of a similar pattern where there's a mandate and then people kind of go out and purchase like hundreds and thousands of licenses of different AI platform for their employees. Um, and then what was the trigger point when you see that there is some problem with the security posture of it? It sounds like there's a lot of kind of like excitement at the beginning and kind of like, all right, now we have to deal with all the side effect of it in terms of security.
Yeah, honestly, it clicked pretty quick, right? So once you start looking at how these tools interact with the existing permissions of your across your data platform, it starts to become visible pretty quick. Obviously, AI didn't create the problem, but it made it visible pretty quickly. As you start asking it questions, and it has access across your SharePoint Teams and Microsoft 365 environment. It start asking you if you want to include this file in your search or this file in your search, and like, well, I don't even know what that file is, and where's that file sit, and what is in it. But it's relating to things that I've asked it So it starts to become visible very quickly that there's been permission drift across, SharePoint. We've had that system for years, and permission drift across that SharePoint and Teams, and suddenly it's queryable in ways it never was before. So what used to feel kind of theoretical and risk or kind of out there by security by obscurity, which everybody loves doing in security. It became very real the moment you start seeing that pop up in the response to your queries.
Yeah. And just kind of curiosity for the audience, right? Like, what AI tools are you guys using? Are you like Microsoft Shop? Are you Google Shop?
We're a Microsoft shop, but wholly. We have the full Microsoft security stack, but we're a Microsoft Copilot shop. We're looking at other tools. We have some other software that has AI in it, but basically on the Gen AI spectrum, agentic, we are wholly Copilot. We're looking very heavily at how can we safely adopt Claude.
Yep, which face similar problems because it's not really a tooling problem. It's more like a data and permission that you have for years, right?
Yeah.
Um, so for the audience, right? Like I'm kind of curious a little bit to hear what kind of AI that you guys are adopting at this point, and feel free to put in the chat if that make it easier for you guys. Just kind of like taking a pulse of where people are with their AI journey and their AI adoptions. Um, So, so yeah, I think that's good, right? And you mentioned that you started adopting a different AI tool like Claude. So Claude is interesting because Claude also have this concept of connectors, right? Where you can connect not just to your Microsoft 365 environment, but like pretty much any data source, right? It could be like Slack, Jira, it could be like whatever. Like same with Microsoft, right? Like a lot of time Microsoft get a bad reputation for that, but it actually not really like a Microsoft problem in a way. It's just that Microsoft is a default tool for a lot of these environment. Kind of curious to hear, like a lot of the CISOs that I've talked to have assumed that their SharePoint and Teams environment is like good, right? Like some of them was like, I spent years kind of tightening this stuff. Um, what um, what changed?
Um, so specifically, this is where Opsin came in to really open our eyes a bit. There's a there was a big gap in what we assumed was true and what was actually true, right? We felt reasonably confident that things were good enough, like you said, um, but then we measured it, and what we found was broad access patterns that just accumulated over time. Nothing malicious per se, but just years of normal collaboration that created exposure we weren't actively managing. So the gap of what we thought or what we assumed was good and what was actually out there and what we measured was a pretty large gap.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's caught a lot of people by surprise, right? Because a lot of times when, say, an employee get access to a sensitive document, they're not going to go to security and say, "Hey, I just know that I'm the least paid person in this company." Right. So I think that's a way a tricky bit in terms of kind of doing so. And for you guys specifically, like what kind of data that you guys are most worried about, and why is this a blocker for you to adopt AI?
Uh, Mostly healthcare data, HIPAA data, anything PHI related. We do have financial data out there scattered through SharePoint as well that we've found, obviously, but our most risk-based data is PHI. We have a business unit that deals solely in healthcare, so patient record information, any kind of things related around that is our biggest risk. So that's the biggest concern.
Yeah, understood. I see responses from Brandon, Ryan, and Martina. It sounds like you guys, Microsoft Shop, like just kind of get a sense of like, have you guys deployed Copilot or any of these AI tools? Like, what kind of problems that you guys are seeing so far?
I don't know that we're necessarily seeing problems, but I'm trying to be proactive about what we could potentially have. We lock down things pretty well, but I want to make sure as different AI things come on board that we are aware that people are actually using them on any of our computers, let alone with their Van Meter credentials.
Yeah, Ryan and James, first, thanks for putting this on. Ryan, question for you. When you talk about like tools that you might have used to determine what was getting used on your network and what people were using from an AI perspective, do you have anything specific you'd recommend to the group that was valuable in that space?
There's a couple. So we've got a combination of just getting a basic arms around inventory of what's out there for agents and what people are using. Opsin, the co-sponsor or the co-host of this call, is great at that. We also use Agent 365. Have just started using that. So a combination of those two is getting us a good asset inventory of what's out there. I'm not going to say that's everything, but it's that in itself was eye-opening. I think our what we just found, or what we're kind of centering around, is our current agent population out there is over 1,400, and that seems to be growing pretty steadily. And that's most of that is within Copilot or Copilot Studio, and then they just spin up every day, right? They're just popping up all over the place. So.
Yeah, and I think that the challenge with this out-of-the-box AI tools, like everyone can just create it, right? Like you can just go and point click. And so at a lot of our customers, we see that this one company, they have like 1,000 agents created per month. And one of which was the CFO himself creating like a financial agent using his own credentials. So that become like a little bit tricky, right? Because anyone who interact with that agent suddenly see like a lot of the data that the CFO get access to. And from a security standpoint, it become tricky because you have 1,000 agents to kind of like go through and kind of look like what is risky and what is not, right? So I think that's always a balance in a way. And I know Creed, I think you deal with a lot of these findings, right? Like the volume itself could be paralyzing. So, right, it's not just about the data, it's also about the agents, right? Like Ryan said, like 1,400, like definitely that's not a level that a human can manually go through. And how did you go about like prioritize, and like what do you tackle first, and how do you decide like what could wait? Because I could imagine like you yourself as is a single person, right? You cannot just like go and do this 1,400 agents, and then there's a bunch of data exposures and this and that, and on top of it, you probably have your other job too, right? So
Yeah. Yep. So we just took a assessment of all the current issues. We utilized your guys' dashboard, which made it pretty easy. Um, after our assessment was made, we decided to just take a deep breath and tackle all the critical and high severity issues at the site level first. We found that those were the top priority for us because they pose the highest risk for our organization. What that means at the site level, just at like our SharePoint for oversharing on content and files, kind of like what Ryan was talking about. We were able to do some broad permission adjustments to kind of lock down as many of those PHI, PII financial documents and pages on our SharePoint and OneDrive that we could. From there, then we addressed all the rest of the site issues, and then moved right into tackling like critical and high severity at the folder and file levels as well. So
yeah, I think well, I have to give big credit to you guys. I think you guys move pretty fast. Especially like in a lot of environments, like especially for a big legacy environment with like petabyte of data, it could be like difficult.
yeah, yeah. It's no, it was a good amount of work. We did find that definitely an importance, I think, for anyone that's utilizing SharePoint or any other site is good education, just good employee education on how to properly create pages, like within your uh, SharePoints, your company's SharePoints that you have, or whatever other central knowledge hub that you're using, on how to create safe, secure pages, where to put files, access permissions. a lot of people don't always know this, but just because you make a SharePoint page private and you have to invite members doesn't mean that other people in your company can't see it. It just means they're not going to be a member of that page and the files that are on there. So that's like a little bit of a language improvement I think Microsoft can make on that end. But there's just, yeah, it was a really eye-opening experience. And again, it just comes to making sure that your data is ready for AI and getting back to kind of the fundamentals of just good cyber hygiene.
Yeah. And kind of curious to hear the folks in the audience, like what measures have you guys done so far in terms of like securing your data? And the reason I asked that question is because some of the organizations, right, they have different like archiving policy, right? Like some of them disable sharing link by default and so on, right? Like, so there is some like built-in tools or settings in Microsoft that you can kind of like adjust from a tenant level. And I know we talk a lot about Microsoft, but similarly, like for Google or any others kind of like software, they always have this kind of recommended setting that you can kind of go and set, right? So I think a lot of the organization that I've seen, like the first thing that you always would want to do is you want to gradually roll out these AI, see if there's any kind of like security risk, then do a lot of education to the users, like what Creed mentioned, and then you kind of like roll out to the entire organizations. And one thing I found pretty fascinating, Ryan, is that I think remember some time ago you mentioned that you kept the findings quiet internally for a while. Talk about that decision, like what's the reason for that, and what's the right way to handle the finding this significant before you got you know finished with the remediation and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think so what James is talking about is that our findings were, if they're shocking to us, how shocking are they going to be to the rest of the company, right? So it came down to timing and control. Um, to us, it's very urgent to fix these things, right? We see there's some broad oversharing happening that we weren't aware of that may have PHI, or we don't want to make that exposure worse by getting it out there and saying, hey, look, everybody, here's a PHI file you can query with your Copilot, right? So broadcasting creates noise without action, so everything looks urgent, right? So we wanted enough signals to say, like, here's what matters and here's what we're doing about it, rather than hey, go fix this stuff. We see it shared throughout the whole company, right? So it's a more grounded conversation with leadership instead of just raising an alarm. We wanted to already have answers and already a plan in place to help remediate some of the oversharing before we broadcast it throughout the whole company.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the right way, right? Without panicking people, right? Because there's not much that they could do, or at
Right.
least,
Right.
right?
Sending a note to the CFO that your financial statement is overshared and everybody at the company can see it is not the best thing to do. Having a solution of how to fix it first is probably the better solution.
Yeah, and the more panic that you create, the more people is like, let's stop the entire thing altogether.
Yeah. Right.
So I think there's a tricky bit of like how you kind of like push the adoption of AI and how you kind of like making sure that people stay safe, right? So one metaphor that I heard from a CISO that was pretty good, right? Like if there is like a freeway and if there's no like street side, no street limit, people would go very slow because they worry they might get into accident. But with security, when you put like the speed limit, there is like a mark on the road and stuff like that, people actually move faster. So like with security, actually you can adopt AI faster as opposed to kind of like, all right, I'm very concerned and worried about security and I don't want to adopt AI that quickly, right? So that's where I think like security function can really be an enabler in terms of like adopting AI instead of kind of like a blocker, right? So um, and I know that we talk a lot about like do this and that, right? Like I know that for example, Microsoft have their own tools like Purview, SharePoint Advanced Management, and all of that, right? Like how should one think about like utilizing the existing control to kind of like control the the rollout of AI. Maybe Creed, I think you were very hands-on with this tool, so if you can kind of share a little bit more your experiences there using some of these tools to help.
Sure. Yeah, so like kind of Ryan was mentioning, we are also using Agent 365 in conjunction with Opsin. Um, I think the biggest thing is, and you guys have been great to work with at this point, is that AI for Microsoft can be a little bit scattered right now. Like we both are addressing agents within Copilot Studio, but we have found that there are far more what they call derivative agents that are made right there within, out Copilot for web or just the Copilot app. And even though that sometimes people can address these as kind of more just advanced prompts than really like their own agents, nonetheless, education into creating these agents for your employees we have found is really important because when people are making, like you said, the CFO making the financial agent, etc., they want to hook it up to every possible. They want to hook it up to the web. They want to hook it up to their Outlook. They want to hook it up, give it all the credentials
Yeah.
to make it the most helpful to them. That doesn't always serve the best purpose, and so having that being able to have multiple different ways to not only have visibility into what agents are created, but what they're accessing has been giving just being able to know that the problem exists allows you to address the problem and find a solution. So you can't solve a problem if you don't know it's there.
Yeah, exactly. And I see a comment from Corey at Fairway Stores. So you just get started with Agent 365. Corey, can you share a little bit more your experiences so far?
Yeah, I mean, good luck finding the documentation, where to go to do a thing. It's and of course it's all, we don't have a stable foundation right now. Like it's all moving so fast, and so the documentation we can find might be outdated by a week or two. And anyway, right now it's very scattered. Microsoft does not have the one place to go to manage Agent 365, and that's just been very frustrating. There's also just a dearth of best practice guidance around this. So, we're just kind of exercising our own judgment in many cases, which works, but we're kind of waiting for the industry to catch up in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel that Microsoft is bearing all the bad reputations because they push like very strongly on this. And I'm kind of curious from the audience, right? Like beside Microsoft, like anyone use any other AI tools at all? Like Claude, ChatGPT, Google Gemini, or mostly people just on Microsoft? Actually, I see a comment from Brandon before. In addition to Copilot, you guys are also using Claude and Notion. Can you share more on like what's the AI adoption so far? Like, is it better on the other side with other tools, or like
Yeah,
how does that look like?
we do it pretty slowly or staged. So Copilot is for employees. And then when we do any sort of vibe coding or any sort of, hey, we want to make a new tool, that's sort of Claude, Notion, what are we going to connect? And then we do it in the testing phase, we're like, all right, what is it connected to? We try to break it, and then we do it in this very staged manner. So it's not like wide adoption of Notion or Claude.
Yeah, which is the right approach, right? You want to kind of like roll out and then see. Actually, I'm kind of curious for that, right? Ryan, I think you guys go the other way. You kind of like roll out to like 300, 350, 400. It's almost the entire firm at once, right? Instead of like the phase rollout that Brandon does. Um,
I'm not saying that was the correct way. I'm just saying that's the way we did it.
Anyway,
Right. We just kind of shotgun approached it, right? And then figured out the holes later, which is, yeah, I wouldn't recommend that, but at the same, it ended up working, but we chased it, right? So we were kind of dog chasing our tail, figuring out, as people have access to these things, what can they access? And that was the real eye opener. I also think that this is kind of probably the next gap, right? So I think the agentic sprawl, and then utilizing more than just Copilot for us is the next real visibility gap and governance gap that we're going to face. We've really started to kind of, like Corey said, there's not a whole lot of great best practices documentation out there because nobody knows what best practice is yet, right? So we're all kind of working towards the same end goal there. I do think there's some, thoughts I have on it, which I'm happy to discuss during Q&A or whatever. But I think right now you just gotta kind of tackle it as it comes, and then work through it. Find your Microsoft link in a different place the next day, right? And on a Defender portal or Defender for Cloud and an agent. It's probably moved, but it's still out there somewhere, hopefully. So yeah, I think the next gap is still visibility.
Yeah, like what Creed mentioned, right? You cannot secure what you cannot see, right? The first thing is to understand like the extent of the problems. Um, and this is not just this we're just talking about like the sanction AI, right? Like Microsoft, Claude, and Notion. There's this notion of like shadow AI, where there are like a bunch of employee using like a DeepSeek and things like that. So when it comes to like a broader AI security perspective, like how do you think about like this shadow AI problem and how do you tackle those at this point?
Yeah, when I remember when that came out or when that really hit the scene, even firewalls really hadn't caught up on, blocking AI categories yet. So we had to add a manual block for DeepSeek into our firewall. I think the industry's coming along a little bit that way for at least browser and DNS protection
Yeah.
from the free versions. Um, but we see that you got to tackle any kind of shadow AI with the same existing tool sets we have right now. So Defender for Cloud is our enterprise, Microsoft level there, where it's seeing where your users are going, seeing what they're using. It's chasing that, right? So you'll see the risk score bubble up in there that somebody's using a different AI if you don't ever already have it blocked. We have that category blocked in DNS. Um, so hopefully that catches it all. It's not gonna, right? And then also your existing tool sets, like what if you've already got a product that you've already approved for use, and then all of a sudden they introduce an update that has AI in it. We have to learn about that, right? So we do have some committees in place now that we roll through known AI usage, and we send those through committees to help combat shadow AI. But we also want those to be really business enablement, so that we can kind of stab off the AI. We don't want to say no by default, but there's some things we just have to. Um, but in most part, we want to get those through the committees and get them recommended and get them in the user's hands that they're wanting.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think you touched upon a very important thing there, which is that in a lot of organizations that we work with, there are usually two pieces. One is they start with some sort of policy, uh, like what is their desired state, right? Like what kind of AI do they want, what kind of behavior they expect from the employees. So that's like part one. And then the part two is like what kind of tools that can help, right? So like it could be like Defender for Cloud, it could be like Purview or like Agent 365 and stuff like that to enforce based on the policy that the organization set. And sometimes people kind of just like go straight to kind of like, all right, let's just adopt it first and then see kind of like what kind of problem that we face and then come back and define the policy. But there's also organization that go the other way. It's like, so at this one organization, I found pretty interesting. They actually have their legal team, their IT, and then the business function sit down together for 3 months just to brainstorm on a policy. I was like, guys, like by the time that you think your 3 months, like the Silicon Valley gonna come up with new concept, right? So right, like they like a year and a half ago it was just chatbot, and now it's like everyone is about agents and what agent can do. So kind of curious to hear your thoughts on like this kind of like two track kind of concept. One is that there is a policy, and then the other is like the tooling, and maybe the third one is actually like how do you convince organization to really kind of like follow through the policy and the tooling that you set.
Yeah, we wrote policy first, right? So I worked with legal myself, and we worked with a bunch of people across the company to really kind of get an overall general policy for the enterprise. Now, the different business units within VGM can have stricter policies if they need. For instance, the one that deals with healthcare probably has a little bit stricter policy on AI use than the rest of the business units. But we did policy first. We formed two committees. So this is all on the governance side, right? This is not anything to do with tooling yet, but two different committees. One is a tech advancement or enablement committee, and that committee really is the intake for somebody to use an AI tool. They need a business case. It'll go through a risk rubric. It'll go through a suggestion, and that they then advance to a governance committee that has legal and senior leadership involved in the governance side of things. Once that's in place, now it falls over on the data security and then the security and GRC teams to how do we govern this AI tool within the organization with tooling. Security awareness is a big part of that, right? Teaching people how to use security tools like Gen AI tools securely is a big part of that, or any AI tool on that, prompt engineering, things like that. But as we're moving towards from the chatbot to the agentic to the fully autonomous type of Gen AI out there, we're finding that, at least in my perspective, I think at some point we're going to have to start funneling these through some kind of AI gateway like we do with APIs. There's got to be a security layer at about every interface where this goes, that we have visibility into it at some point to see what it's doing. We can track it. Hopefully we can undo it if it goes malicious or bad on us, things of that nature.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good, right? And Brendan and Corey, you guys have some comment about Dropbox. Like, what is that? I don't understand what that means.
Yeah, so it was sort of like how, a decade ago, like every client we were working with seemed to have a problem with people spinning up private Dropbox accounts and then sharing company data and putting them in, using that as a secure file share, but it wasn't a corporate Dropbox account, it was a private account. And so we're seeing that a lot now with AI, where people are just spinning up their own cloud accounts. It's their own private cloud, and they're trying to do corporate work on that account. And it's like, wait a second, what? Like, we offer them that you can just use corporate ones. So it feels like the exact same problem from a decade ago, as far as like, somebody using a private repository.
Yeah, and then they can share the chat or conversation on like a Claude or like a chat GPT, right? They can share like this custom GPT with people as well, right? So I think that's where like a lot of tools like Microsoft Defenders, where they can kind of like help you block like the personal account. It's probably like that's where it come in. And I think this idea of these AI gateway is interesting, right? It's like you route everything there. Now, of course, the tactical bit is a little bit trickier, right? Like how do you route everything there?
Yep.
Right, like it's great on the idea, but like how do you enforce it? Like how do you force every agent to go to that damn AI gateway? Especially like a
Yeah.
lot of these agents not even running on the endpoint, is running on the server, right? Like for example, like okay, just take the Copilot agent for example, right? A lot of those actually run on the Microsoft server, right? Same thing with
Yep.
Claude. They have this concept of managed agents. ChatGPT also have agent. All of these are running on the server, and we're not even talking about Salesforce agent force. Also have agents like every SaaS have an agent, right? So I think it's a bit kind of like interesting. And Ryan, I think Ryan Sharp, right? I think you guys are looking into that at this point. Like, what are your thoughts on that topic, and what's the problem and the concern that you have there?
Yeah, I think I like the AI gateway concept. I think there's going to be technologies out there that are going to help measure it for you. I mean, I was just at an event with Databricks. They're coming out with their Unity AI gateway. I think that's an interesting product to look at. Cisco still has one under their umbrella concept. We haven't looked at that one in a while, and I think Microsoft will probably evolve theirs into an AI gateway as well. So I think you're going to have lots of choices out there to look at, but the concept is definitely something we're going to be looking at.
Yeah, definitely. So for the time being, from a practitioner standpoint, Chris, like what are you worried about these agents? What are your concerns? What the security risk?
I think the big thing aside from with the agents is that I think Ryan and I are still working on tackling is not just what they have access to, but just identity as a whole. You know what I mean? Like when these agents are created, are they, who is responsible for these agents, overseeing them, governing them? What access level do we give them? Trusting an agent with access is a little different than trusting an employee with access. And do all agents that are made by a certain employee deserve the same amount of access that employee has within the company? There's just a lot of nuance to that. And I think that's just where we really, like Ryan was saying, I'm on both those committees as well. It's just about kind of making that proper policy, making those guidelines, and kind of figuring out how that goes. And we do definitely joke that our AI committee should just be the software approval committee at this point, because all software is going to have AI in it eventually. Yeah, so just getting back to like what those risks that we're worried about is both just how to properly address that identity in consort with what AI the agents have, and really tuning in and the controls and the access that they have.
Yeah, definitely, right? Especially with you guys having like 1,400 agents, like thinking about like what and who using these agents and what kind of permission and access that these agents have, right? So a lot of time, what I've seen in enterprises, the default is that the agent will inherit the permission of the creators. Um, and that's become a little bit trickier, especially if someone with like an admin access, right? So that become like super hard. And then the second thing is that one agent is out in the wild, another agent can invoke that agent. So it's not just about like the human interaction with the agents, but it's also about the agent to agent communication. And a lot of the time, it's become a lot trickier because these agents are not just about accessing data and showing to end users. You actually can make tool calls. You can act. Like it can send out email, right? Like that might contain PHI data, like inadvertently, right? Or it could make certain damages to like a database and stuff like that, right? So it's become like a multifaceted of problem, I would say, like starting with like identity, like like who's access and permission, but it also become a data problem where like what kind of like data it can get set, but also like, it become kind of um like with the tool calls and the action aspect, like who is responsible if something goes wrong?
Yeah, I completely agree. And to touch on like an AI gateway and making sure that you're tracking any of those tool calls and what AI I've already seen, with our Copilot agents is they'll talk without even me needing to, like even the derivative agents within Copilot. I'll have one agent that handles a specific task for me for workflow and another agent. And I've had my agent A use information that I gave agent B because I thought it would do a better job. So just because we are looking into visibility and what different agents are able to reach out and touch, you might have certain controls or certain things in place for, agent A, but not on agent B. And because agent A can talk to agent B, if that makes sense, that's a whole nother can of worms that we're going to have to address. And I think that's where the identity piece really comes into practice is what identity are we giving to the first agent, and making sure that it has only those specific permissions and can only communicate with what we're expecting it to communicate with, um, so that it's not again the visibility problems. If we don't know that it's reaching out and has all the access to agent B, we also need to assign identity to that and make sure that those certain controls and protections are put on that agent as well. So
Yeah, excellent. I know we have about 15 minutes left, so would love to open up the floor for questions from the audience. We can make it interactive.
Hi, everyone, and I'm Caroline from the Opsin team. So we do have the Q&A feature here down in the Zoom. If you want to drop any questions into the Q&A, it'll help us keep track and then push them onto the speakers that are here with us today. And thank you so much again for coming. Okay, we do have something that was asked. What should be our containment or kill switch strategy for AI systems, including agentic, that pose a critical risk to the business? How should we be thinking about that? Who would like to take that one?
I can kind of start with kind of our basic. Creed's probably a great answer at this too. So at the AI Tech Enablement Committee, the first committee that goes through, they ask a certain amount of questions of the person that brought it in. I think the five major ones that I kind of lean towards when it comes to the governance level is what data can it access, what identity does it use, where can it act, how autonomous is it, and can we audit it? Is there a trail? And if they can't answer those five questions, it's a no by default. So if we can answer those five questions and then we can generate a risk score on that, if it's a critical risk and it's not, a hugely business enablement kind of thing, somebody else has to answer the risk, yes or no question on risk, but at least we can present it in a way that whoever on that governance committee can see the risk of it and then weigh that with the business value.
Yeah, and I can chime in a little bit there. Right? I think that the traditional paradigm of like, all right, something happened, we detect it and then fix it might be a little bit too late when it comes to agents, because agent is moving at machine speed. So what you want to do is you want to have proactive enforcement, meaning that you want to have another agent to proactively do all the things that Ryan said, which is that it audit other agents, like what kind of data that other agent get access to, what kind of identity that being used. Like is that an audit log of like what is it doing? Like usually an agent would have like instructions and the tool calls and the data. So you kind of know what's the intention of the creator when they create these AI agents. So you kind of like baseline that with what it actually doing. For example, if an agent was given instruction as a marketing agent, but suddenly it get access to all these epic medical system, for example, like through agent B, like what Creed said, right? Then that's where you say, all right, this is deviate from the intention of the creator. And that's where I think that we need to shift the mindset of like human enforcement into more of like there is another um, guardian agents or enforcement agents that can continuously monitor the environment and make adjustment as soon as the trip happen, right? Because maybe it started as a marketing agent, but over the time, the like the people give it more data or stuff like that, it make a scope creep, right? That's where you kind of need to have another agent to monitor it like 24/7 and act on it. Like you can do things like quarantining agent and stuff like that. So I think that's where the paradigm shift in terms of like how you secure agent need to change.
I also I don't know if there's like a best practice kill switch necessarily when AI goes wrong, but questions that we definitely ask in these governance committees is a lot of times everyone wants to add AI, if it has AI, we need it, right? And we focus a lot about the onboarding, but also before you implement these tools, as exciting as they are, really discuss your offboarding plan too, and what that and if something does go wrong, talk about escalation. How are we addressing, if problem occurs, who's responsible for that problem, how are we escalating that problem and addressing it? And if it's not a problem that we can solve and that we're okay with in our environment, how are we going to offboard this tool? Are we going back down to a lower subscription that does not include AI, or do we remove the tool altogether? I think those are questions you're definitely going to want to ask yourselves before you implement the AI into your environment.
Which is a great place to end, because another question for all of you that's here is, what does good look like for agent and AI security 12 months out? How should CISOs be measuring themselves by next summer?
Oh boy, visibility is going to be key, right? Yeah, I think 12 months out, we're going to be in a whole nother different area of agentic AI. I think in a year is going to change a lot of stuff.
Have you heard the latest concept, agent loop, Ryan?
I haven't heard the agent loop. I think it's more of,
And
like Microsoft M dash, is that what you're talking about, the agent loop where it's
No,
piping through?
there this new concept of like agent doing its own work and stuff like it just came out like a month or two in Silicon Valley. So this is like the hottest thing. But just to reinforce your point, people in Silicon Valley like where I'm staying right now, they're gonna come up with new concept all the time.
Yeah.
So Agent Noob is like an autonomous agent that can self improvise and self act and stuff like that.
Oh, great.
But anyway, that's to your point.
Yeah.
12 months from now, you might be living in a different world. But like, yeah.
Yeah, I think like I still think visibility is key. Prioritization, you're going to get a lot of questions for it. Repeatability in your process to govern it. If you can design a framework or a process in your own business that helps you enact governance that you feel good about or feel safe with, having that repeatable is going to be good. You don't need perfect data hygiene, but you really want to understand your exposure and have a way to prioritize that stuff and continuously improve it.
James, Creed, anything else you want to add? Your predictions.
I tend to let Ryan handle the CISO questions. I'll
Nice
be there Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only one CISO here, but I talked to a lot of different CISOs and organizations because of this market changing so rapidly. I think a little bit of philosophical wise, but like staying up to date on the latest things, I think is very important. And technology changed all the time, right? Like before that, people were thinking about like MCP as a way. Now there's like skills as a next, because like these technical standards are evolving. Like there's new ideas that's coming up, and it kind of like gain momentum at that time, and then people say, "Oh, that sucked. That's not the technical standard that we want to go." And now they come up with like skills, right? Like MCP and stuff like that. So like and then A2A, agent to agent communication standards and stuff like that. So I think like just staying up to date on like what's the latest threats are, and then kind of like see where you can kind of adopt your organization to that. I think that's going to be very important in today uh, AI age.
Okay, which is great. This will be our last Q&A question, but a lot of organizations are blocking AI tools to reduce risk while others are embracing AI aggressively to gain competitive advantage. Where do you think the right balance lies, and how do CISOs avoid becoming a barrier to innovation from your perspective?
Yeah, it's in my perspective, again, take it with a grain of salt. And I think it's all about business value and business need. You have to align your security program with your business, and that value hasn't changed. With AI, it's still the same prospectus and same risk. Obviously, the risk is different. It's AI risk instead of other risk or data risk, but it's still all about business value. If you can align your security barriers and meet the business where they're at, you'll still be on the good side of business.
James, any final comments, or Creed along those lines?
Yeah, I would just say fundamentals. Just because it's AI doesn't mean it's, the like Ryan was saying, it's just you making the same evaluation as anything you've made in the last, since, several decades is does the risk, outweigh the reward, for business use case, and as a security team, especially here at VGM, we really, really don't want to be known as the Department of No. So a lot of us is let's hear the business unit's ideas and let's have a dialogue on how we can work together to do it safely and securely. Going back to, James's analogy he was using earlier, and I explain this to the business units a lot, is, we want to be that F1 car. We want to be first in the race. Part of F1 racing is turns. It's not just a straightaway. You need brakes, and that's where we come in. It might seem like we're slowing you down here and there, but when we're working together, we're actually completing the whole race a lot faster and a lot safer than if you're just going pedal to the metal and not slowing down to reassess on those turns.
Yep, exactly. This could be it, right? Like security is like a concrete barrier in the middle and all the lanes so that you can go to maximum speed. But without it, you're gonna be worried that you're gonna crash and you're not gonna be able to move as fast. So I think that security is truly an enabler, right? Not a department of no, like what Chris said. And I think that's where we as an industry will need to position ourselves in this AI journey, which is that we are helping organizations and businesses to get the most benefit of AI and move as fast as they should.
It's funny, this is the second time I've heard F1 cars and driving used as a metaphor to describe security and how it can unlock with safety the guardrails to really let the business go fast. So maybe we need an F1 event for this Technology Association of Iowa at some point. I want to thank all of our speakers, Creed, James, and Ryan, for joining us today. Thank you so much to all of you, the members, for joining us as well. Any other questions you have, you're welcome to reach out to TAI and drop them there, or you can come to the Opsin website and leave us a question, or LinkedIn as well. So please LinkedIn everybody if you haven't already, and enjoy the rest of this nice day.